Are you guys able to see my screen okay now, Gabe?
Yes, sir. It looks great.
Great. Thanks everybody for joining the webinar. I appreciate your time today. As Gabe mentioned, I'm going to go through rapid communication and how it's so important, especially nowadays with all these natural disasters happening, how crisis communication, what's the best way to go about doing it, especially in our industry. So my name is Ashish Patel, as I mentioned. I'm the CEO and founder of Pilera Software. I got a master's in software engineering, over 17 years of experience in property management space itself. Before that, I used to work for Fidelity Investments. I worked for them for 14 years. I'm also part of the CAI's Technology and Data Security Task Group. The CAI Technology and Data Security is basically for HOA, HOA to manage for HOA management companies. And I've worked with literally hundreds of management companies throughout the US, helping them with communication as well as other things that Pilera provides. Are you able to see my full screen? Because Shumeda, is everything looking okay on your side?
Yep, yes, sir. Yep, Shumeda, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. So Pilera, basically, I started Pilera in 2008. We specialize in communication. When I started the company, there was really nobody actually was really focusing on communication, especially in the property management space. So I thought it would be good for me to focus on that, especially in those days. We were still using phone calls to reach residents. Many manual phone calls were being done. Texting wasn't even available or capable at that time. So I really zoned in on communication in the property management space. My first client was, I think, like 34 unit apartment community. And then that grew into nationwide. Obviously, we have thousands of communities now using Pilera throughout the US. We are very highly customer service focused. And because of my technology background, we tend to bring innovative features that other companies are not really focused on. And as part of my demo later on, I will show you some of the things that we have done as well from innovation purposes, especially integrated with Rent Manager and for Rent Manager clients. We are still bootstrapped. So basically, the reason I put that on here is it allows us to focus on doing what's right for the customers and building the right functionality with a long-term vision, as opposed to trying to meet the next quarter's numbers and taking shortcuts to making that happen. So today's agenda is basically what managers struggle with, especially in case of emergencies, because that's one of the things we specialize in. Communication emergency handling is one of the things we do. Pilera overall is a CRM platform, and there are many other things that we do. But for today's session, I'm going to focus primarily on communication and how we can help with automated communication and why automated communication is important in our industry. I'll go through some examples where some of the people have utilized our software that I know as to how the communication has come in handy for them, having a better communication platform. And I'll also talk about our Rent Manager integration. As everybody knows, there are so many fires going on in California recently that basically, I think the first fire took about 24 days to contain. So basically, it reminded us all about the purpose of the emergency communication. You can, within just last year alone, we had Hawaii, which major disaster, happening over there with the hurricanes. We got Florida, I think, 2 major hurricanes last year. And so basically, communication during these types of events is very important, as much as the water shutoff notices, a lot more important, I guess, than water shutoff notifications. Overall, natural disasters are increasing in the US. Just the 9 of the worst disasters happened within the last 10 years. In 1980, US averaged about $3 billion in disasters per year. In 2023, it was up to $28 billion. That's B with a billion. And I think with 2024, we're looking at 58 billion in insured losses. So natural disasters are happening more with climate change or whatever you believe in, but it's definitely happening more. And so there are a lot more people, especially because we work with people, we work with residents, owners, owners of HOA condos, tenants in the apartment space, because it impacts people's lives. It's so much critical now, being able to communicate with everybody in case of an emergency disasters. The disasters are getting more and more expensive, like I already mentioned, that 2024, we are talking about up to $58 billion in the insurance coverage. So this is becoming much more important as far as the natural disasters themselves, and then how that impacts us and in the property management space and our lives and the residents and the communities that we work with. So why is it important to create a communication plan? Because a lot of times, I think it's becoming evident that you can think that nothing's going to happen, but now nobody imagined California was going to have such losses where the whole people, hundreds of people losing their homes. So I think it's becoming more and more critical, more so than ever, to have an emergency communication plans. And the reason it's also important is because the assets are replaceable, but life is not. And so that we actually have situations, for example, in two of our communities that I know of, there was active shooting going on, and they were using our system to communicate with each of the residents. So having a communication platform, emergency communication plan, we have some clients in California, even before the fires, they were using our software to do earthquake disaster recovery planning. And every year they actually do a drill. Going back, 10 plus years, they've been our clients. And 10 years ago, the earthquake was a big important thing. Obviously nowadays, fires and other natural types of disasters are just as prevalent, as much as people are not so much worried about earthquake now, I guess, but more like fires. But my point is that the assets can be replaced if a house gets burned down or such, but the life cannot, which is why the emergency communication plan basically helps save lives. And also prevention, maintenance, compliance, that those all just go in to making better experience for the residents, because they feel like they're being taken care of by the management company that they work with or the managers in charge of the community. It makes them feel safe, secure, as a place to live. And then it also obviously increases the retention, where people feel like the management is on top of things, especially when it comes to communication, especially during emergency types of situations. Um, Having a communication plan also allows the management to move quicker, respond quicker to residents' needs, and nowadays everybody's expecting immediate communication and knowing what's going on, especially with smartphones. So having a plan ahead of time before the disaster occurs is becoming much more critical than it has ever been. Some of the mistakes that we see in the emergency that basically occurs, that basically there's unclear communication that causes chaos. A lot of times, for example, I have noticed we have some clients in Florida and they get hurricane, their offices get flooded, and they're telling me that having a platform, being prepared, allow them to be able to communicate. So because they hear from other residents, other communities where people are not getting communication for days sometimes, even for work order updates or just a normal communication, it makes it basically easier for them if they have a communication plan in order to handle those types of situations. One of the key things, obviously, if you want to communicate, you want to make sure that the latest contacts are up to date, and so that make sure people are being aware. Some of our clients actually even have flyers in their office, the main office, when somebody drops by, just to make sure that update contact list, just to make sure the residents are providing that to the management. As I mentioned earlier, one of our communities do a drill every year, actually, for the whole community for earthquake preparedness. But so doing drills and training for the staff, definitely not doing enough drills or training for the staff definitely slows down the emergency response. and basically failing to plan overall. It just increases the disruptions in the management. It creates inefficiencies of operations, lack of communications and frustrations for the homeowners, for the HOA types of communities, and the tenants in the apartment space or multifamily. How to build an effective emergency communication plan. We're going to talk about that a little bit next. So the best thing to do is, these are some of the things that we have found that works good for our clients. Every community and the location is different. For example, we just talked about fires in California. We got many clients in Florida, especially, or North Carolina, with the hurricanes and disasters. So depending on what types of disasters that could be happening, and so what do you plan to do in that kind of case, is to just to think about that ahead of time and have a situation plan for each of those. Building relationships with fires departments and police obviously is very critical as well. Some of the fire departments are actually working with our management companies to make sure the residents are aware of what the preparedness plans are for the community. They're actually working with the management company hand in hand. So if you haven't worked with any of your fire departments or police, I would recommend you reach out to them as well to see what they're doing for the community and how the steps that they're recommending or suggesting. Then the next step obviously is to make sure that each residence is provided the evacuation process and contact list, especially when they move in, or if they buy a property in the HOA, or if they're moving into a new apartment. So having something on print is usually also useful, that even in this day and age, as well as the digital formats, especially depending on the age of the tenants or the resident, then some of the elderly people might prefer to have some printout that they feel comfortable with on top of their fridge in case of an emergency, and making sure that establishing a checking system to confirm once the disaster happens, making sure that you're able to have everybody reach out, back out, make sure that they're safe. So that's also critical, especially when there's emergency and there's all kind of chaos going on. So being prepared like this and planning out ahead of time and making sure that people can respond back to you is also very critical as well. And obviously, this is not talking about taking care of your normal maintenance that you have to do, just so you know, the fire alarms and all those kind of checks. This is more or less more like the planning of the people per se and the process around this disaster when the disaster happens. The next step is establishing a communication alert system. In order for the communication to happen on any kind of platform, you want to make sure, obviously, that you have the accurate resident information, the latest email addresses and phone numbers. As I mentioned earlier, some of our management companies might even have a rack card or some kind of card where the residents can provide the updated information if they happen to come into the office, and if they change their phone number or email address recently, they can provide that very quickly to the management. The other thing is hard copy also becomes important sometimes in case of the internet is down, or in case of an emergency where you're not able to reach the residence or your phone. Just having a hard copy around, even this day and age, becomes critical. So we always tell people to make sure that you have a backup copy it's available and easily accessible, where all the office staff is aware where it is as well. Then the communication process that we've seen a lot of times when a disaster happens, that really the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. So obviously this is all part of planning ahead of time, defining the roles of who's the communication person, who's the main contact person, that is going to be sending out communication. A lot of time with apartment communities, you got the back office staff as well as somebody's on the property, but not all the properties have managers available on the property. So defining who the roles are, the right people who's going to be communicating, and a backup communicator in case that main person is not reachable as well. The other thing we recommend is whatever platform you have, make sure that you're able to reach residents in their preferred preferred method of communication. Texting, email, phone call, whatever the residents feel like they're going to be looking at first initially. So make sure that you are aware of that as to their preference, and have a platform that accommodates and meet the residents' needs, basically. The other things that we suggest and we found useful is obviously monitoring government alerts, working with fire departments and police also helps and facilitates with that. Designate a manager to provide real-time updates for the communication channels. So as I mentioned earlier in the last slide, having a defined role for the communications manager and a backup person for that person as well, for the community. And sometimes it could be a company-wide as well. And then do the assessment when it's safe to do so, obviously. The emergency is basically how, what I want to talk about next is how the automated communication makes it easier. How does this help your lives as well as the residents' lives, make it better? The contact information is up to date for each of the residents. The next, for any kind of automation system, not just Pilera, but any other automated platform that you might be using, make sure the communication platform allows you to communicate with thousands of residents, instantaneously. Being able to, especially some of the large-sized communities that we get involved with, we hear before they use our system, the platform they're currently using is slow. When they send out text messages or phone calls or emails, sometimes it takes hours for the residents to receive those email messages, communication. Obviously, in case of emergencies, you don't want to have something that takes hours for the residents to receive the message. So rapid communication is extremely important in case of a emergency, natural disasters especially. And because you're talking about saving lives, and the sooner you can communicate, obviously people can make other plans. So instead of going back to the community, they can, they can figure out like, okay, it's not safe to go back to the area where I live, so they can make other plans directly right away. You want to reach residents in their preferred method, like I mentioned earlier, phone calls, emails, texting. So basically, these are very prevalent technologies now where everybody can provide this type of capabilities. And if your current system is not giving you that kind of capability, then I would suggest you look at an alternative. Being able to communicate all at once. So, as I mentioned earlier, a couple of slides back, you want to meet the residents where they are at. If somebody prefers to get a phone message, like an elderly person, you want to make sure that the system you're using is able to provide them their message in the phone. If somebody prefers to get their message via text or a email, you want to make sure that you're communicating with them with their method as well.
Hey, Ashish, before you get going, you may want to slide your screen over just a little bit. I think when I ran the poll, it might have thrown your you're hanging off just a little the other way there. There we go.
Okay, sorry about
that. No, you're good. Thank you, sir.
Basically, you also want to actually let me see. Yes, language translation. I don't know if I talked about this. Sorry. But now a lot of platforms allow you to reach residents in their preferred language for texting and email, especially. Actually, with our system, we can actually even do phone calls in Spanish as well. So you want to meet the residents in their preferred language. The track and confirm message delivery, you want to basically make sure that when the message is sent out, you're able to see it very quickly as far as if it was delivered, if the phone call was made through your system, how many seconds the phone call was, if it went to the answering machine. The key thing, obviously, is you want to make sure that that your message was received, so that people kind of know, got the message, and they can take actions based on the message that you communicated with. And it also helps to identify, who hasn't received the message, so you can reach out to them some other methods. Some of the other systems, basically, you want to make sure that you have commonly used templates. And this comes in handy, not necessarily for emergencies, but, like water shut-off notices, somebody's late on their rent or dues, any kind of communications like fire alarm testing or the elevator not working. So this makes it easier, basically, that you're not typing everything from scratch over and over again. So just more of an operations efficiency. At this point, I want to talk about one of my clients' community. This is in Connecticut. They actually had a building that burned down to the ground. It was a 54-unit condominium complex, and they, the building was there, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then basically was gone by the nighttime. So this impacted, and they ran into this emergency situation. They were utilizing a platform, and they really gave us, some of the things I've learned and some of the things that they even had a fire department, for example, being able to communicate with the fire departments and state senators. They wanted to be in the communication system because they wanted to make sure the rebuilding process was going well. So this allowed them to having a communication platform, and some of the plans that we discussed earlier allow them to basically reach residents right away. The manager was not able to get onto the property till like 2 hours because then I was further away. Especially with the traffic and all, but they were able to communicate. And this is where the emergency platform, having an emergency platform, comes in very handy for situations like this. And so this is a real life example. Another real life examples I talked about is active shooting. Unfortunately, we've actually had 2 communities with active shooting, and they were using a platform, and they mentioned how useful it was to have a platform dedicated for communication to be able to reach residents and to let them know, because they were surrounded by sheriff cars. They were locked down state for the community, and they were just wondering what was going on. So it just makes it easier for them to know, having a communication platform. The immediate response after the fire for the building, basically management met with the residents to verify and update information in Pilera, make sure everybody kind of knew. This community had been using a platform, so they were familiar with Pilera, and so they were appreciative, obviously, of being able to notify about what was going on. They were notified about, as the progress, because when a fire like this happens, people need to know where to access the insurance documents and, basically just basic stuff that we take for granted. So having a platform dedicated to situations like this really came in handy for them, and they give us a great video testimonial talking about how useful Pilera was for them as well. Basically, as I mentioned, the management company was providing monthly updates, photos, video tours about the reconstruction of the community, and the best thing, the best testimonial I received from the management on this is because of our platform, and they actually say this in the video, they did not get a single lawsuit on their hands. Because of their ability to communicate the rebuilding process and everything with with all of the residents. Unfortunately, one person, the fire has started from a cigarette butt. Somebody left a cigarette out burning, and that kind of caught on the whole building on fire, unfortunately. So one of the things that we have done as part of Pilera is we have provided ability to do complimentary ebook on the risk of preparedness. That are some of the things that I mentioned. So this is going to be part of the slides where you can actually access this and with your contact information for your residents, whether it's for HOA for residents, owners, or tenants for the multifamily communities. The residents can update the communication preference method in our platform and how they wish to be communicated with, as well as their language preference. We track messages and support at a unit level. And then we have a concept called distribution groups, a dynamic distribution groups. It automatically gets updated. And I'll show you what I mean as to how our clients are utilizing the dynamic distribution groups. So I'm going to get into the demo. So before I get into the demo, I just wanted to mention, besides communication, Pilera can also help our clients with work orders, violation trackings for the condominium HOA types of communities, task management for the staff. We have a help desk product designed specifically for property management space where you can track incidents, logs. And then we also have resident portals. For our rent managers clients, we primarily focus on communication because Rent Manager already provides some of these other functionality. And I know Rent Manager also has communication capabilities, but because we are specializing in it, because we don't do any accounting, This is something we've been doing for 16 years. We just take it to the next level, is the way I would describe it, as far as how do we enhance your rent manager experience, utilizing your rent manager data, but taking it to the, the best communication platform, basically being able to offer everything that I'm about to show you. So as far as our communication platform, we can reach residents via email, phone call, texting, even postal mailings in case you need to do physical letters with your logos and your address and such. We support language translation for over 100 different languages. We can track responses. So when you send a message, let's just say to 100 people in the community, and 20 of them respond back to the manager about a question or something. And any kind of communication going back and forth within the manager and the residents is automatically logged and tracked at the message level that was sent, at the resident level, so you can refer back to it, especially in case of litigation. I had one apartment client, multifamily apartment building of 340 units, and she was telling me how useful our system was when they got a lawsuit by one of the tenants. For the tenant had complained that they were not notified about bed bugs in the unit next to them. And they were able to refer back and provide a full history of all the communication they did related to that incident in a court, and they were able to win the case. The dynamic distribution gets updated automatically, like I mentioned. What the dynamic distribution group is, let's just say you got a unit, silo units of units, with HVAC system, or next to the elevator, or beach-facing units or properties. You can actually create a group of unit-based group, and our unit-based group automatically gets updated as you're moving residents in and out of the units in Rent Manager, and the unit distribution group will automatically be updated for you at that point as well. We work on fall protection because of emergency needs. We have a backup system, so we want to make sure that your email is delivered, your text or phone calls as well. And I'll walk you through how some of that works in the demo as well. So let me just switch over to the demo of our communication platform. Even though Pilera does a lot of the CRM things that I mentioned, and you can go to pilera.com to learn some of the other things that we do. But for this demo purposes, I'm going to primarily focus on the communication. So this is an example of one community. This is a sample, test community, demo community that we have for 40 units in this community. And then for each residence that you see here, this was, we can bring this data over from Rent Manager. So we do a nightly sync with Rent Manager. So anybody that you knew moved into Rent Manager will automatically get added to Pilera. And if you remove them from Rent Manager, they will be removed from Pilera. For each resident, you can go in here and if you're using our portals, which you don't have to, but if you were, the residents can go in, or you can go in for each of the residents as a manager, update their email address, their phone number, and their text number, and how the communication should be sent. So if you've got an elderly person, somebody who doesn't even have a smartphone, you can set them up to get a phone call, receive phone calls through our system. And for somebody with obviously the smartphone, they prefer to get their message via text or email. And then what language? Our system automatically will translate your message. So the manager types a message in whatever the language they in English, obviously, but the residents will get in their preferred their message in their preferred language. I haven't run into a language that we don't support yet. So basically, anytime a resident says they want to get the message in Chinese, Korean, Hawaiian, whatever, will automatically translate the text message and the email in their preferred language so when they get so our system automatically knows who to call, who to send an email to, who to text, and what language. So if you have a community of 200 people, you don't have to worry about that. And the way you send a message out through our system is you would just send an announcement. You can do standard message or emergency. And emergency, basically, what we will do in case of an emergency is we will try to reach the resident with every contact information you have on file in the Rent Manager, as far as phone numbers and text and an email. Otherwise, for standard day-to-day communication, we will honor their preference as far as like water shut-off notices or moving the cars for snow plowing, for example, for some of the northeast, northern communities with snowstorms and such. Otherwise, in case of an emergency, we will reach them every method we have on file for them. Some of the other emergencies we hear about is water, water main breakage, water shutoffs, obviously, a lot of, especially for high-rise buildings with, when something's drastic, like the elevators or such. So those kind of communication, we make it very easy and convenient. You can send a message to the entire community or just one specific location. In most of the multifamilies, usually one building, but we also have HOA clients, and sometimes the properties are spread it out. So they can send a message, across different streets, different buildings, even at a floor level or a unit level if you've got multiple people living in the unit. Or as I mentioned earlier, you can send a message to a distribution group. So you can create a distribution group based on, homes with basements, for example, or not tower units next to the elevator. And then this group will automatically be updated based on the people who are moving in and out in the rent manager. You can also send a message just to the tenants. So this community happens to be an HOA example of community where there's a concept of board members. So we can, or owners, obviously for multifamily that wouldn't apply. So depending on the type of community, you can communicate with the appropriate people that you designate. You can create a commonly used templates. So if you wanted to, you can just go to manage and create a new template, but I'll just show you some examples. Like let's just say that the road is closed or the fire alarm test is happening in the community. I can send that message at a floor level or the building level to the entire building. And I can just say send via text, phone, or email. In that case, obviously physical mailing doesn't really apply in case of emergencies, but we actually have that option in case you want to do all your communication in one platform, to the point where we will do the mailings for you as well. So we work with an outside partner. You create your letter in Pilera, it'll automatically send it out on your behalf and without you doing anything. So you just construct your message in a matter of a few minutes, and they'll take care of the whole mailing and everything for you. The subject, so this is what's going to be sent via text message, but this is what's going to send via phone call, and this is what's going to go out via email. Because we realize that text message, you want to be less, you want to be short in the message. So we support, and we want to make sure, we're trying to meet the residents where they are. There's no point in leaving somebody 5-minute message on a phone call if they're not going to listen to the full thing. So, but emails, you can be a lot more verbose. You can have, bold and rich text characters and colors and images. And almost some of our clients actually use our email capabilities as a newsletter for the community as well. So, instead of paying for a separate platform, depending on your needs, it's not, our main thing is communication. So, I mean, if you want to use constant contact or such for really market purposes, that's fine. But many of our communities get by using our email capabilities. You can even send yourself a test message to see how it's going to look or how it's going to sound on the phone or the text message before you send it to the entire community. You can schedule it ahead of time. So if you know that, the water is shutting off on Monday, you can remind everybody on Sunday night saying, don't forget the water is shutting off. One of my multifamily clients, she really loved this feature, especially because they're based in Northeast and snowstorms. And she was telling me, like, before Pilera, we had such a hard time getting people to move their cars for snow plowing. And now, when she knows there's snow happening overnight, she just schedules something ahead of time, before, like a half hour before the plow is going to be on the plow guy is going to be coming. And she was saying I could see them from my office running around like spiders, moving their cars for the plowing before otherwise they were going to be towed. You can even send yourself, see a preview of who's going to get the message or who's not going to get the message. And as I mentioned earlier, our system automatically knows who to call, who to send an email to, who to text, what street, what floor. We just make it simple. And in case of an emergency, you want your system to be as simple and clean as possible, as far as possible, because you don't want to be confused because there's going to be a lot of stuff going on in case of an emergency. When the emails go out through our system, we put your logo on it. So basically it's the management company's logo and this is template. It's a nice looking email as opposed to just a standard, just verbose text, it's a professional looking email. And then once the message is sent out, in the message center, this is an example. So this was sent to 25 people in this case. You can do view delivery details, and we will show you exactly what was sent via email, what was sent via phone call, what was sent via text message. They'll tell you if who was the recipient, the email address was who received it, if the email was opened, if the email bounced as well, we'll tell you about that. Once a month, we send you an automated report of every bad email address you have in Rent Manager that we failed to communicate with. And we can, so if you got a community of 300 people, whatever, so once a month, you're gonna get an Excel report that every person that we failed to communicate via text or a email bounces. So because Pilera works with Rent Manager, obviously the data that's in Pilera is the same data in Rent Manager. So we'll tell you about all those bad email addresses you have in our systems combined. If the email was dropped, for whatever reason the text didn't get delivered, if our system made a phone call, we'll tell you how many seconds the phone call was. We will make 3 attempts to reach the residents if we get a busy signal or no answer. This is what I meant about the fault tolerance stuff built into our system. We did the same thing with emails. If the email was then delivered, for example, let's just say the internet outage because the recipient server was down or something, we will keep trying to, for actually we have a algorithm sequence built in where we're going to keep trying that email address over the next few days just to make sure the message was gotten through. Obviously, in case of an emergency, 99.999% time is going to be fine, but we kind of plan for those type of disasters where we are not able to reach the residents, and we're going to keep trying. Same thing with phone calls as well. So that's why we make multiple attempts. And if there's a language translation done through a system, we'll actually even show you the translated version of the text or the email that was sent to the resident. Some of our clients can go back 10 years of like what they sent messages out 10 years ago, what they had communicated. So we keep a history of all the communication. So I can see every communication that was ever sent for this community. And then when we work with management with multiple communities, they can actually access the entire portfolio, depending on the right access and of the privilege that they have. But they can see messages sent to the entire any of the communities, makes it easier. Once the message is sent through our system, we have a concept called message inbox. So let's just say this impending snowstorm message that I had sent, or it was just a water shut off or whatever. We will actually show you in the inbox any of the communication that came back from the residents as well. And so in our system, whenever a resident responds to an outgoing message, we will forward that message to the management. So the manager will get the resident's response, but we will actually log it and track it in the message inbox. And any communication that's going back and forth between the manager and the residents is automatically updated and logged and tracked in our system as well. So we keep track of threaded communication. It's probably a good way for me to explain that. The other thing that we've noticed with the Rent Manager clients is we offer multi-community announcements. So in case you want to send a message to your entire portfolio or just handfuls of the communities, you can actually send a message just to the multiple. So we'll send a message to 100 communities if you need to. In case of an emergency that affects larger area, or any kind of communication that you need to reach, like happy holidays. Or the office being closed early or whatever. So we have a capability to send a message across multiple communities, email message to your portfolio as well. And the last thing that I want to mention here as part of the communication is we also, besides sending a message at community level and tracking in responses, you can send a message at each resident level as well. So if only a few of the residents are late on their rent fees or rent dues, you can send a message only to those 2 people. And instead of sending a message to the entire community or the floor or the building, it's only going to go to these 2 people. And here's a visual indicator, because we failed to communicate with them last time, you have a visual indicator saying, oh, if John happens to stop by the office, or if a manager wants to reach out to John, they can call them saying, hey, we have a bad email on file for you. Can you please let us know your latest the latest email that you have? So we want to make sure that communication happens with you. Once again, we're all very communication centric. Everything that we do in our CRM platform related to work order management, related to help desk type of product that we have. We in kind of resident portals, we have procurement process management as well. But any of the things that we do is all built on a communication platform. That's why we are a very strong believer in the communication. As I mentioned, Pilera has been around since 2008. So that's about 17 years. And we have 98% customer satisfaction rate on Capterra. If you happen to go on a Capterra, they've been doing this for a very long time. And, we get great testimonials. It's nice to hear as a CEO of the company that our platform was able to help them in case of a drastic emergency or announcements that where it was very critical for them to reach residents. Next steps, anybody?
Excellent. And I know you had the language model up there, and you were able to go through any of the languages. Does this work for anything that's out of the country as far as like phone numbers? And if you touched on that, you may have, but does everything work, internationally as well?
No, we are US and Canada. We have some clients in Costa Rica, but it's not international platform.
Not okay. Excellent. Thank you. Okay, good. Well, Ashish, that looks like it's all our questions there. Again, if anybody needs to get a hold of Ashish, I've got some instructions coming up here shortly. But sir, that was great. We appreciate your time. And I'm going to go ahead and grab the presenter mode back from you if you don't mind.
Yep, go ahead.
There we go. Thank you, sir. So another way you can learn about Pilera software is inside Rent Manager by going to Admin, Available Integrations, and searching for Pilera software and selecting Contact Sales to learn more and ask questions, or by clicking Request Activation if you're ready to move forward with the integration. We do have a survey at the end. This is another way you can get in touch with Pilera software. If you do have more questions or think of something after the presentation and would like to reach out. Also, this is a great way to give us feedback and topics on suggestions for future webinars. Please keep an eye on our training calendar as we have integration spotlight and a weekly webinar schedule posted there. Our next integration spotlight will be with Anaquim on April 1st, pet screening on April 8th, and then finally Inspection Express on April 15th. But as a reminder, every single integration spotlight is recorded. So if you missed the beginning or would like to go back and watch it again, you can certainly do so. Today's webinar will be posted in Rent Manager University 2 weeks from today. If you would like to learn the latest best practices, trends, and technology affecting the property management industry, then check out our podcast, Beyond Rent. Ashish, I know I've said it a couple times, but thank you, sir. We appreciate the attendees and our Rent Manager customers jumping on to learn some more. I hope everybody has a great day, and we'll see you all again next week.
Thank you, Gabe.